What's good, y'all? It's your man's He Be Playing here with my first Let's Chat About It video. In the Let's Chat About It segment on my channel, we're just going to talk about different topics that I find interesting from sports, anime, different life events that I come across that I think that you all might like, and really just kind of open up a dialogue and discussion with the community. And because it's March, what better way to start off this segment with March Madness, right? College basketball playoffs, right? From the Cinderella stories, the exciting games, to the tournament runs. This would be the perfect kind of way to kind of kick off this video series, right? So in this channel, or in this video, I'm sorry, right? I'm gonna go through my bracket. Who do I have upsetting folks? Who's gonna make the long tournament runs? And who's really gonna stand out during this March Madness season? And then I'm gonna just again go through my bracket, decide who's gonna from all the way from the round of 64 all the way to the championship game, and let you all give you my insight. And honestly, this might be the one. I think I might just pick the perfect bracket, right? So stick around to the end of the video to kind of see who I got going all the way. And then, so kind of how this is going to go, I'm going to go through each region and kind of go through each round and then select the winner from each region. And then I'm going to hop into the final four and then go into the championship game. So without further ado, let's get it. So starting off with the East region, and I'm sorry if I look down, I got all my picks on my phone. So I want to make sure I get them right. But starting with the 1 versus 16 matchup, the number 1 UConn versus the 16th Stetson. I'm going with UConn, champions last year. Been the big dogs all year round. So that's going to be a no-brainer. It shouldn't even be close. Next matchup is the number 8 Florida Atlantic versus number 9 Northwestern. I'm going with Northwestern. They got a couple. They got a win. They got a couple wins off of big teams. One being Purdue. So I think they just face higher level competition. And I've seen Florida Atlantic kind of be shaky throughout the year, even though they had a good tournament run last year. But I think Northwestern pulls it out. The next game is the number 5 San Diego State versus University of Alabama Birmingham. Again, San Diego State's a perennial powerhouse. I don't see them having an issue with this number 12 seed. I think they face higher competition. They got some better wins, so I think San Diego State wins that. Next game is the number 4 Auburn Tigers versus Yale. Auburn SEC champions. They look good in terms of how they play, high energy, high effort, good skill players. The SEC champions. SEC's been pretty good this year, so for them to come out and win that conference championship's a good sign. And I think they're on a roll, so I don't see them having any issues with the 13th seeded Yale. Next matchup is number 6 BYU versus Duquesne. BYU is a good team. They got some good Big 12 wins, which is Big 12. I think is probably the best basketball conference outside of the ACC. So for them, for the fact they got good conference wins, say something. And they're a team that doesn't beat themselves, right? Which is a key factor. And when in an upset loss is a team that's higher seed that just beats themselves. But BYU doesn't do that. So BYU is going to take it. Next is going to be number 3 Illinois versus number 14 Morehead State. I was real iffy on this matchup. My heart was telling me to go with Morehead State, but my mind and my research tells me to go with Illinois. Illinois has been a great team. They got to do it over their average in 23. But Illinois is one of those teams that do beat themselves, right? In terms of in the tournament, right? No matter how high of a seat they are. But I think Illinois takes it. And then the next is the 7 seed Washington State versus Drake. Washington State has good wins over Arizona this year. And I think, again, they play high level competition. They got some good players, and they don't typically beat themselves. So I think they'll take it over 10 seeded Drake. Next matchup is number 2 Iowa State versus South Dakota State. Again, Iowa State won the Big 12 championship over Houston. We got some good wins in the conference. I don't really see them beating themselves and losing to a 15 seeded South Dakota State. So that's the round of 64. Let's move on to moving forward to the round of 32 for the East region. we have the number 1 UConn Huskies versus the number 9 Northwestern. Again, UConn is just in a class of its own this year. Um, so I don't think Northwestern is going to pose a problem. They might, yeah, it might be a little bit close throughout the game, but I definitely think UConn has the experience to not be in a trap game like this and kind of pull away later in the game. So UConn is my pick. Next one is a number 5 San Diego State versus number 4 Auburn. I'm going with Auburn. Again, SEC champs. They have the momentum. I think they're going to be a little bit too athletic for San Diego State. And I think because they face higher competition throughout the year, I definitely think Auburn has the advantage in this one. Next one is going to be number 6 BYU versus number 3 Illinois, and this is where Illinois falls because BYU does rarely makes mistakes and they have high wins against good uh, Big 12 opponents. I think they're not gonna make mistakes and they're gonna force Illinois to make mistakes. And because Illinois will make mistakes, I think it won't be. It'll probably be close, but I don't think it's gonna be. I think BYU is gonna be have a sizable lead at the end of this and pull off the upset against Illinois. So be on the lookout for that. And then finally, in the seventh, Washington State versus number 2 Iowa State. I think Iowa State's just better on both sides of the ball. I think they're going to slow down Washington State. I think they're going to create a lot of opportunities on like counterattack off of turnovers for Iowa State. So Iowa State is definitely going to take the win over Washington State. All right, so for the Sweet 16, this is where it kind of gets kind of tricky. I have the 4 seeded Auburn upsetting the number 1 UConn Huskies. I think because UConn made a deep run in the tourney last year and they've been so great this year, they're just going to run out of gas. And when they face a team with momentum like Auburn will have, I think it's going to be a close game, but Auburn takes the cake. And then Iowa State, which is a 2 seed, will beat BYU, who's a 6 seed, for the simple fact that Iowa State's the better team. They've seen BYU twice this year already, so once you kind of know your opponent and kind of have confidence against them, that's going to be kind of give them a leg up. So yeah, that they're going to move on. Auburn and Iowa State are going to move on to the Elite Eight, and then Auburn's going to beat Iowa State in the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four. I think Auburn has the better players than Iowa State. I think it's going to be a tough defensive battle, but I think Auburn has a little bit more offensive power to kind of win out that defensive battle. So yeah, Auburn is my pick to come out of the East region. Okay, let's move forward to the West now. So we have the number 1 North Carolina Tar Heels versus 16 Wagner. Again, like the East region, this is a no-brainer. North Carolina should take this pretty easily. They have a couple of the best players in the country on their roster, so I don't see them taking the L this game. Next matchup is number 8 seeded Mississippi State versus number 9 Michigan. Again, a close matchup. These 8-9s are always going to be close, but I have Mississippi State. I think they have a little bit better wins than Michigan State this year. I'm surprised Michigan State even got in this year. I think they had a down year this year. Anything can happen in the tournament, but I definitely think Mississippi State's going to take this one. The 5-12 matchup in the West is number 5 seeded St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon. Again, one of those kind of nervous ones that I think about taking. I can definitely see Grand Canyon pulling the upset. However, I think St. Mary's, which is a WCC champion, they always play tough in the tournament. Fundamentally sound team. They knocked off Gonzaga from being the top dog in that conference. So I think St. Mary's is gonna do pretty well, and they're gonna hold their own against Grand Canyon and take the win. In the 4-13 matchup, number 4 Alabama is taking on Charleston. Alabama's a too high of a scoring team. Even though they let Charleston put up a lot of points, I definitely don't see Charleston outscoring Alabama. So Alabama's going to move on. In the 6th, 11th matchup, in the 6-11 matchup, we have number 6 Clemson versus New Mexico. Another upset alert. I'm having New Mexico over Clemson. I think Clemson has a good season. However, New Mexico also is a good squad. I think they won the Mountain West tournament this year. They're riding high. I think these are one of those matchups where I think Clemson's a little bit better or rated a little bit higher than they need to be rated. And I think New Mexico is a tough team. So I definitely see New Mexico pulling out the upset on this one. The 3-14 matchup, we have number 3 Baylor versus number 14 Colgate. No issues. Baylor, another high level Big 12 team. They had an up and down season, a couple upsets. However, I don't see them. I think their skill set's a little bit better than Colgate in terms of like their players. So I definitely see Baylor pulling out this one. In the 7-10 matchup, I have another upset alert. Right, number 7 Dayton will be losing to number 10 Nevada. Again, usually when it's kind of like those higher rated mid-major teams like Dayton, that are rated kind of higher over like a semi Power Five school like Nevada, because I know they're in the Mountain West. Mountain West has better competition. Um, Nevada has played better teams. I know Nevada has historically been strong in the tournament as well, so I think they're gonna beat Dayton. And then lastly, kind of biased, because I gotta rep my alma mater, right? We have the 2-15 matchup. We have Arizona versus number 15 Long Beach State, and my heart, I'm telling me to go with my alma mater, Long Beach State, but Arizona's just too good of a team, and I think they're gonna beat Long Beach State. However, I'm not gonna be mad if my bracket is busted and Long Beach State beats Arizona. I'm totally okay with that. But yeah, so that's the West region, round of 64. All right. So for the round of 32 in the West region, we have the number 1 North Carolina versus number 8 Mississippi State. North Carolina, again, I think they're a powerhouse. I think not too many teams can stop them. North Carolina is going to beat number 8 seed Mississippi State. In the 5-4 matchup, number 5 St. Mary's versus number 4 Alabama. I think Alabama is just too high scoring for St. Mary's. I think Alabama is going to just run up and down the floor. I think St. Mary's is going to get tired, because I don't think they can kind of contain that type of scoring or have seen that type of scoring this entire year. So Alabama is going to take that. Number 11, New Mexico versus number 3 Baylor. I'm going with the upset again. I'm thinking New Mexico is going to be the Cinderella team this year. Baylor again, and one of those other teams like Illinois, they always beat themselves. Like they've always at some point in time throughout the tournament they have a bad game and then they lose, and I think that's going to be against New Mexico. And then the number 10 Nevada versus number 2 Arizona. I think Arizona is just too high powered. Caleb Love is going to go crazy, and then he's gonna lead them past Nevada. So yeah, that's the round of 32. Okay, in the Sweet 16 for the West, I have number 1 North Carolina beating number 4 Alabama. Again, I think North Carolina is going to be able to contain the Alabama offense on defense and be able to outscore them on offense, because they're too talented. They're well coached. They've been a powerhouse all year. And I think Alabama just can't compete in terms of skill level. And then I have Arizona, the number 2 seed, beating New Mexico. I think this is where New Mexico's Cinderella story ends in the Sweet 16, and Arizona moves on. And in the Elite Eight, I have North Carolina beating Arizona. It's going to be a Caleb, because like Caleb Love transferred from North Carolina, I think, and he was their star player over there. So I think North Carolina gonna kind of hold a little bit of grudge and take pride in really shutting him down. So I think North Carolina moves on from the Elite Eight to the Final Four, and they win the West region. So in the South region, in the round of 64, we have number 1 Houston taking on Longwood. I think Houston, again, no brainer, top dog team all year. They take care of business in the first round. In the 8-9 matchup, we had number 8 seed Nebraska versus number 9 Texas A&M. I looked at Texas A&M's wins, and I think they're a little bit better than Nebraska, even though Nebraska has that Japanese Steph Curry. Dude, who's going crazy. I definitely think that Texas A&M takes that one. I'm in the 5-12 matchup. We have Wisconsin versus James Madison. Another tough game to call because I know James Madison has over 30 wins. However, I think Wisconsin is too much of a fundamentally sound team, and they're not going to make too many mistakes. So I don't think James Madison is going to have the skill level to compete with them. So I think Wisconsin takes that. Number four, Duke versus number 13, Vermont. Duke is just too good for Vermont. Um, Great coach, great players, and Vermont's not going to be able to handle that. The 6-11 seed, number 6, Texas Tech versus NC State. I have NC State beating Texas Tech. Another close one that I'm kind of debating on, but I'm leaning NC State. NC State had a great run throughout the ACC tournament where they beat Duke and North Carolina. And I think they were one of the best teams at the beginning of the year. So I think they finally caught fire and caught the momentum, and I think they have the talent to compete with Texas Tech. So North Carolina's going to win. North Carolina State's going to win. In the 3-14 matchup, we have Kentucky versus Oakland. Kentucky's just too dominant of a team. They're going to get Oakland out the way pretty easily. And then we have Florida versus either Boise State or Colorado. I'm filming currently while the game is going on, and by the looks of it, Boise State or Colorado don't look too good. So I'm going with Florida, who had a good showing for at least for a little bit against Auburn in the SEC championship, to take that one. And then lastly, we have Marquette versus Western Kentucky, the 2-15 matchup. Marquette being the 2, Western Kentucky being the 15. Marquette, another one of those good teams who have been kind of strong all year. I think they're a top 10 team at one point. They kind of fell off during the kind of like the later parts of the season, but talent-wise, they're going to be too much to handle for Western Kentucky. So that's the round of 60. So in the round of 32, we'll start off with number 1 Houston versus number 9 Texas A&M. I think Houston beats Texas A&M. They have too great of a team that plays well together. They have a great coach. They played well all season. So I think they're going to make a deep run into the tourney. In the 4-5 matchup, we have number 4 Duke versus Wisconsin. I'm taking Duke. Duke just has a better players and has a better system than I think Wisconsin has. And then also they face better competition. So I think Duke's been there before, right? Duke is a bluegrass team that knows how to play in the tournament. So they're going to definitely take that over Wisconsin. North Carolina, which is the 11th seed, or North Carolina State versus who is the 11th seed versus number 3 Kentucky. I have Kentucky, North Carolina State because they've been up and down all year. I think they'll be hot for a couple of games and then they'll fall off. I think Kentucky has the players, the coaching talent, and they've been, again, another bluegrass that's been in the tournament a lot. So they know how to play consistently all the way through. So I have Kentucky. And then we'll have number 7 Florida versus number 2 Marquette. I think Marquette just has better players in Florida, and I think Marquette's going to take that. All right, so now for the Sweet 16 in the South region, we have number 1 Houston versus Duke, which is the 4th seed. Duke is going to upset Houston in this matchup. Again, Duke has just as equally great as talent as Houston. I just think because Duke is a bluegrass, I think the odds are going to be tilted in their favor. So I definitely think Duke's going to upset Houston in this matchup. And then we'll have number 3 Kentucky versus number 2 Marquette. So I have Kentucky beating Marquette for the same reasons as I said for Duke. Bluegrass that's been there before and has just as good talent as Marquette. And I think Kentucky's John Calipari is going to outcoach whoever Marquette's head coach is. And then lastly, in the Elite 8, I have Duke, number 4 seed, defeating Kentucky. I think Duke has a top notch, a little bit better players. Even though I think Kentucky has like 1 or 2 players that might be outstanding, I think Duke team wise is better than Kentucky. So I think Duke is going to take it out of the South region and win that one and go on to the Final Four. So we made it to the last region, which is the Midwest. In the first game, we have number 1 Purdue versus number 16 Grambling State. I definitely don't think Purdue makes the same mistake as last year and loses to a 16 seed for the second year in a row. So I think Purdue takes that one. In the 8-9 matchup, we have Utah versus TCU. I think Utah is going to take it. This was a coin flip for me. I think I seen Utah average a little bit more in terms of points. So I just literally flipped a coin and chose Utah over TCU. In the 5-12 matchup, we have Gonzaga versus McNeese State. McNeese State is another 30-win team. However, Gonzaga's Mark Few, even though they have like the top high quality players that they usually have on Gonzaga, Mark Few always has his team ready for the tournament, and Gonzaga always makes a run. So I have Gonzaga over McNeese State. Number 4, Kansas versus Stanford. I know Kansas is looking to be down at least one of its superstars. However, I think Kansas has enough firepower on their roster to get past at least Stanford for the first round. So I'm going with Kansas. In this 6-11 matchup, we have South Carolina versus Oregon. Another upset alert. I don't know what it is. I have a lot of 11-6 over 6 upsets, but I have Oregon going over South Carolina. I think Oregon has the momentum in terms of winning the Pac-12, beating the top teams in there. Even though South Carolina is having a good year this year, I think because they have a first-year head coach. I think he's new to the tournament. I think Oregon kind of takes advantage of that and and sneaks a win out against South Carolina. Next, we have number 3 Creighton versus number 14 Akron. Creighton's been a beast all year in the Big East. I don't see them having any issues with Akron. I think Creighton takes that one pretty easily. And then we have number 7 Texas versus Colorado State. I think I'm taking Colorado State, which is a 10 seed, over Texas. I think Texas has underperformed this year. I think there was like one of the best teams at the beginning of the year, but they've been highly disappointing, especially as of late. So I think Colorado State takes that, especially coming out of the Mountain West. I think they were kind of underrated. I think they're kind of underrated for like where they're at in terms of seeding wise. So I think Colorado State's going to win that one in an upset. And then lastly, we have number 2 Tennessee versus number 15 St. Peter's. I know St. Peter's was a Cinderella team a couple years ago. However, I don't think Tennessee's going to let that happen this year. Tennessee's too good on the offense, and they have too many stars on their team to let St. Peter's win. So Tennessee's going to win that one. So on to the round of 32. All right, so for the round of 32, we have number 1 Purdue going up against number 8 Utah State. Again, Purdue should handle that one pretty easily. In the 5-4 matchup, 5 being Gonzaga, 4 being Kansas. I think Gonzaga takes advantage of Kansas being shorthanded in terms of not having their superstars. That's really going to impact Kansas as later they go on into the tournament. So I have Gonzaga over Kansas. And then I have in the 11-3 matchup, I have Creighton over Oregon. Oregon, again, I think they have enough momentum to get by that first game. But as soon as they run into a team that has a game under their belt like Creighton, I think it's going to be tough for them to beat. So Creighton's definitely going to take it. And then number 10, Colorado State versus number 2, Tennessee. Again, Tennessee's just going to be too good, has too many stars on their roster, and plays too together as a team to let Colorado win. So yeah, those are my picks for round 32 in the Midwest. In the Sweet 16 for the Midwest, we have number 1 Purdue versus number 5 Gonzaga. And I think Purdue is just too strong of a team to let Gonzaga beat them. I think Zach Edey is just he's a phenomenal player. I think he's going to outmatch anybody that Gonzaga has. So I'm taking Purdue over Gonzaga, and I'm taking Creighton, which is the 3 seed, over number 2 Tennessee. I think Creighton is too tough on the team on both sides of the ball. I think they're going to definitely shut down some of Tennessee's stars, and I think without those stars, Tennessee is really going to falter. Right, so I'm having Creighton take the upset if you want to call it an upset. 3-2 is not really that big of an upset, but Creighton over Tennessee. And then in the Elite Eight, Purdue's going to beat Creighton. Again, I think Purdue is just too tough. Purdue, I think, is 7-0 this year against top 25 teams. They had a couple hiccups, but I think from start to finish, Purdue has been one of the best teams in the country. And I think they're going to show that against Creighton, where there's going to be in a class of their own type of thing. And I have Purdue winning the Midwest. So now we're on to the time everybody's been waiting for. Let's talk about the Final Four. All right, now the Final Four. In the first matchup, we have Auburn versus North Carolina. And even though on paper and throughout the year, North Carolina has been the better team, I am taking Auburn. Auburn won, again, the momentum. I think by this time they're going to be hyped. And I think they've been a pretty good run a couple years ago as well. So Bruce Pearl knows how to keep them consistent throughout their entire tourney. I think throughout the season, Auburn has been scoring more, and the defense has been better than North Carolina. So I think Auburn pulls an upset over North Carolina in this matchup. That's a 4 versus 1 matchup, which is rare that the 4 wins. However, I believe Auburn, especially if their star players play well and they match the level of talent with North Carolina, I think it's gonna be a close game. It's gonna be tough, but I think Auburn takes this one to go on to the national championship. And in the second game, we have number 4 Duke versus Purdue. I think Purdue wins this one. I think Purdue again because especially because they lost last year in the first round. I think they've been the most consistent team from start to finish this year, and I think they'll be continuing that consistency in the tournament. And once they get on the roll, they're hard to stop, right? And I think they've had a few good wins. Over again, they're 7-0 versus top 25 teams. They played tough competition. They went up against the best and they beat them. Where Duke has kind of had some up and downs this year. Lost to Wake Forest, lost to North Carolina twice. So yeah, I think Purdue is gonna take that one and move on to the national championship. And in the national championship, the moment we all been waiting for, drum roll please. I have Purdue beating Auburn. I think again Purdue's just in a class of its own this year. And I think the only couple teams that could have beat them, I think they're gonna lose earlier in the tournament. I think Purdue's going to go on and win the championship, and they're going to pull their feet off kind of like how Virginia did, where Virginia lost in the first round that one year and they came back to win the championship. I think Purdue's going to do the same thing, and they got a chip on their shoulder. They have one of the best players in the country. They have a great, solid team, good depth on the roster. So I definitely think they're going to win the national championship. So yeah, that's my bracket. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or you have any challenges to what I picked or who I picked, let me know let me know in the comments section. Also, let me know who you all choose, who's going to pull it out this year in terms of and be the national champion, and how your bracket's looking. I'm definitely going to do a review video after the tournament's over. I'll see how my bracket did. And yeah, if it's great, I'm gonna hype myself up. But if it's terrible, I'm gonna speak up just as loud, right? So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I appreciate the support. Please like, comment, subscribe. Because this channel is new, all the support is highly encouraging. And this is the first Let's Chat About It video. Also, I'm trying to make this a little bit more higher quality in terms of editing. So if you think I did a good job, please let me know, and I'll be greatly appreciated. Other than that, it's your boy, he be playing, and as always, be smooth out here in the streets.